My new office, Ultra Prime Real Estate. My computer turns on easily. I have the requisite 4 screens, minimum, required for a hedge fund manager. I look out onto 54th Street, bustling 54th Street, on the corner of fashionable Madison Avenue. I feel like I've arrived. There's only one minor problem. Well, minor is probably an understatement. The investors who I expected to have given me my money to invest, their money's nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found. See, Solomore Capital was a long-short equity hedge fund focused on financial institutions with a specific bent on, you guessed it, insurance companies. Solomore was named after my daughters, Lauren and Morgan. I had expected on December 17th, 2012, to already have the money of my investors. To have SNL, the database that I would use to analyze the stocks of insurance companies, and it'd be all set to go. But the money was nowhere to be found. The insurance companies that are expecting to give me their money, their investment returns were under pressure. They needed to diversify. And Solomore, my hedge fund, was a perfect solution for them. A perfect solution for them. But despite my extensive experience and my great track record at Citigroup, they decided not to invest. They had voiced myriad objections. They said to me, Joel, what's your infrastructure? Who's going to be running the business side while you invest our money? Why do we have to pay fees? And don't we have to consolidate your hedge fund onto our financial statements if we're going to own more than 90% of you? In short, I had no investors, and I had just moved in to my commercial real estate space on 54th and Madison Avenue. And suffice it to say, the pipeline that I had in the fall of 2012 was also non-existent. So here I was, approaching 2013, with no clear route to starting my hedge fund. But I had moved into the space. I had made all these commitments. I'd signed a lawyer, I'd signed up a lawyer, an accountant, an auditor, a prime broker, a fund administrator, and of course, the requisite compliance company. Did I make a big mistake? Earlier in 2012, I had met one of many angels over the last 5 years. I went to a meetup group called The Power of the Mastermind after Napoleon Hill's book Think and Grow Rich, chapter 10, The Power of the Mastermind. I met Paul Pompeo, And we were both there to start a mastermind. But in Napoleon Hill's book, he talks about the power of the mastermind. It's the coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony where you have two or more people for an attainment of purpose. And in Think and Grow Rich, he mentions the Ford Motor Company. The Ford Motor Company was actually started by a mastermind group with Henry Ford, his future wife Clara Bryant, Harvey Firestone, who made the tires, Thomas Edison, and Burroughs and Bryant. That group was the start of the Ford Motor Company. Well, this meetup was no Ford mastermind. And Paul and I soon walked out of that meeting 15 minutes into it saying, what are we doing here? Well, what we were doing there was the synchronicity of Paul and I meeting and realizing we should start our own Power of the Mastermind, which we did, and grew it to about 10 members in 2012. The enlightenment from that group was pretty amazing. The goal was to start a joint venture where we could have our own business, like maybe the Ford Motor Company. But if not, at least to support each other in our goals, in our dreams for our lifetime. Members started recommending books to each other, which for me was powerful by itself. The first one, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers, you may have heard of. I use it with my daughters all the time. Lauren, feel the fear and do it anyway. Morgan, feel the fear and do it anyway. How many of you, before your son or daughter goes to school, say to them, take a risk, honey. Take a risk today, honey. That was one of my powerful books that one of the members of the mastermind recommended, but there were many others. The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama. The Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. There was Throw Out 50 Things by Gail Blank. There was The Science of Being Rich by Wallace Wattles. And a key favorite of mine was a book by David Schwartz called The Power of Thinking Big. The Power of Thinking Big. David Schwartz recommends, and actually if you want to go onto my website, under My Inspiration, you'll find his affirmation. He recommends putting this affirmation on your bathroom mirror and saying it to yourself every morning, from The Power of Thinking Big. Well, there were a lot of great books from this mastermind group. We didn't actually create a joint venture, but those books alone really got me inspired for 2013. Paul also recommended to invest in yourself. He said, go to a seminar at least once a year. And so I decided in 2012 to go to a seminar called the Millionaire Mind Intensive that was sponsored by T. Harv Eker after his book, The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. Paul said, it's free. Well, that's good. But they're gonna upsell you. They're gonna want you to buy a $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000 course. But if you can get over that, the inspiration will really propel you forward. And I went to the course in December 2012. I had a lot of aha moments, a lot of inspiration, and a lot of secret exercises. In fact, if you want to know about the wooden arrow exercise, I was sworn to secrecy, but just email me at joel@solomore.com and I'll tell you about it. It's a pretty powerful exercise. The other thing that came from that course was affirmations, which I did for 6 months My daughters, Lauren and Morgan, at the time, 5 and 7, memorized them quicker than I did. And to this day, they can repeat them back to me 5 years later. They were 7 and 5 at the time. So back to the end of 2012, I just come back from the Millionaire Mind Intensive. Did I make a big mistake? I kept on asking myself this question. Did I make a big mistake? I thought I'd have the money from the investors by now. I moved into the new office. I committed to paying 1 year lease on 54th and Madison Avenue. But I didn't have any investors. Did I make a big mistake? Did I make a big mistake? I knew that this is what I was supposed to do. I knew I was supposed to start a hedge fund. In fact, if you had asked me in 1993, what's my dream job, I would have told you, hedge fund manager. And here I was, about to start 2013 without any investors, without any pipeline. But I knew this was right for me. Leo Buscaglia. To know and not to do is not to know. To know and not to do is not to know. So despite knowing that I was supposed to be a hedge fund manager, I still had doubts. So what did I do in the first 9 months of 2013? I learned to doubt the doubt. I learned to never give up. And I learned to act as if. And I learned to trust my gut, trust my intuition. See, if anyone had asked me earlier in 2012, when would I start investing my limited partner's money, I would have said January 1st, 2013. So, I went about acting as if. From Dorothea Brand, who said, to guarantee success, act as if it were impossible to fail. Act as if it were impossible to fail. So I started acting as if. I acted as if by moving into that real estate space, in fact. I had hired all those service providers. I acted as if. And I did even more crazy things, because I knew it was impossible to fail. I started interviewing analysts in January 2013 with no money to be found. In fact, I interviewed a lot of former colleagues, and I hired one in January 2013. Sean Ryan became my first employee. Sean and I had worked together at FSI. He was going to be analyzing the banks and the specialty finance companies, while I analyzed the insurance companies and the asset managers. What else did I do in January of 2013? I dialed for dollars. I called and I emailed everyone I knew. All those institutional investors, all those insurance companies I had relationships with. Those insurance companies who knew me. January 25th, I go to a meeting with this insurance company. I had a good feeling. I had a really good gut feeling. And the guy across the table said to me at the end of the meeting, he said, Joel, you have a really interesting process, and your track record at Citi is really impressive. I'm going to bring this to our decision maker, the chief financial officer of the company, in the next few weeks. February 11th, I have another great meeting with another institutional investor. I feel like I've dreamt this dream before, over and over again for the last 20 years. But now I'm on the cusp of realizing this dream. I felt blissful. And so we waited, and we waited a few more weeks. February is actually one of